Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Good Morning Education Show. My name is Rotimi Itaya, and such a pleasure to be here today. And we're excited to have you here. And I believe that's going to be a great time on the show today. And of course, on the show, we always talk about news within the world of education, around the world of education. We don't just stop there, we also share views on the subject matter of the day. We have conversations that I'm sure you'll be excited to learn from, to listen to, and of course, to also glean from. On the Good Morning Education Show, we always look forward to your feedback, to your communication, to you sharing with us, and of course, thank you so much for joining the Good Morning Show. And before we go further, I'd like to inform you that the show is now Mondays to Sundays as opposed to Mondays to Fridays. And of course, we believe that on the weekend special, the timeline on Saturday is 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. And Sunday is 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. And I believe that it's going to be a great time together as you join us on the show. We'll be right back. Let's go for a 1-minute break. I'll be right back. All right, welcome back to the Good Morning Education Show. We're streaming from Lagos, Nigeria to West Africa to the entire world. This is the Good Morning Education Show, and I believe it's such a pleasure to be here. Any moment from now, any of our analysts will be joining us on the show, and I believe that we'll be having a great time together. So we're going to start with the headlines, and once we're done with the headlines, then we'll move over to the other conversation of the day. So the headlines first, and then we will be back to have the conversation for the day. We're going to be starting with the first headline that has to do with the Senate. And this is talking about Senate passes bill to establish federal universities. Faye, good morning.
Good morning to our tribe members.
Hello,
Good
can you hear me? Your
morning.
mic? No.
Okay, can you hear me? My mic is on.
Yes, I can.
Okay.
So
Good
please,
morning.
over to you on the news headline. Thank you.
Senate passes bill to establish federal university teaching hospital. The Senate on Tuesday passed two bills seeking to establish two federal universities in Ekiti and Nasarawa states. The bills are the Federal University of Health and Medical Sciences in Ekiti State establishment and Federal University Lafayette Teaching Hospital establishment. Both bills were both bills follow the presentation and consideration of two separate reports by the Committee on Health, Secondary and Tertiary. Well, one thing that we have always had a little bit of debate, or that we have always had debate over, is if current universities are not functioning at optimum capacity. There are threats of strikes here and there. We don't shy away from the fact that yes, we need more tertiary institutions because we have more students, and we have every year maybe less than 5% of those who write tertiary, who write the UTME exams, get admission into the university. There's not even enough spaces for them. But then the concern is if these new institutions are set up Are they not going to go down the way the others did? Are they not going to go into issues of strikes today or tomorrow and having all these issues with the government? That is the point of concern for us. And if there is all of this money that can go into establishing new universities, why not remodel or upgrade the current ones? Let them have more classrooms. It's easier to continue to maintain those you already have than to start running a new one, an absolutely new one. So these are the questions that come up, and these are the debates that we have. It's a good thing for us to have newer institutions, but then let's also consider the realities that we have on the ground. In similar vein, there is another. Okay, let's move on to federal government's unfaithfulness may return us to strike as who wants. This is exactly what we were just talking about now. This is another threat of strike this week alone. The Academic Staff Union of Universities, ASU, says federal government's unwillingness to implement agreements could lead the union back. The Yola zone of ASU, which comprises universities in Adamawa, Taraba, Yobe, and Borno states, gave the warning on Wednesday during a press briefing at the Adamawa state capital, Yola. The union stressed that federal and state governments are both guilty of reneging on promises made to ASU. It's exactly what we're talking about. ASU is going on strike, and I hope we're facing the reality that if these new universities are set up, it's lecturers from the existing ones, most likely, that are going to move there. That means that we're going to be pampering or taking care of the new to the detriment of the old. These things just need to be properly spelled out and well coordinated for us to have the best results possible. Um, Okay, this is related to the first item we had. Senate passes bill to establish Medical Sciences University in Ekiti. So yeah, we already had this. The Senate on Wednesday passed a bill for the establishment of the Federal University of Health and Medical Sciences in Ekiti State. We have touched on this previously. So moving on to the next headline. Stakeholders renew Stakeholders renew call for improved budgetary allocation to education. Stakeholders have urged governments to shore up budgetary allocation to education to improve a lot of youth. In the separate remarks at the University of Ibadan Alumni Association, Oyo State Branch, they also canvassed improved collaboration with governments and policymakers for educational advancement. The Adeboruwa of Igbogbo, Lagos State, Oba Semiuddin Kasali, urged the government to increase its funding to the sector, reminding that education is imperative for national development. If you were on the show yesterday, we talked about education in the jaws of politics, and this is just an apt voice to that discussion. And if you missed it, please catch the replay. I think this is just that point where we say we drop our mic. Really, we cannot stress enough that improved education, that education improves our system and is imperative for national development. UNICEF raises alarm over attacks on schools. The officer in charge of UNICEF Maiduguri the officer in charge of UNICEF Maiduguri, Chief of Field Office Samuel Sese, listed some consequences of violent attacks on education to include increasing number of out-of-school children, poorer health for citizens, rising cases of early marriages and unwanted, well, I would say unplanned, unwanted, perpetuating the cycle of household poverty, increase in infants and maternal mortality, amongst others. According to him, between 2009 and 2020, a total of 1,400 schools were damaged. More than 1 million children were forced out of school. 2,295 teachers were killed, with the yearly dropout rate for children in Northeast highest in Nigeria. The statistics very disheartening. The number of teachers that have been killed, 2,000 plus. The number of children that have been forced out of school, 1 million plus. The number of schools that have been closed down because of insecurity and the attacks on schools. There is no way anybody can anybody who is being objective can sit down, look at the statistics and say, oh, we can continue business as usual, or we can continue things the way they have always been. No, it cannot be business as usual. We cannot continue the way we are currently. Something has to change. There has to be, and the change is not just any form of change. There has to be improvement in our security architecture and framework, especially where children are concerned. Adults are living their lives out. It's the children that are coming behind to take over. So, for everything that we can, let's take care of these children and ensure that they are safe and they are well. Our next headline, and maybe the last for today: varsity lecturers decry exclusion from TET Fund scholarship. University lecturers from the faculties of arts, education, management, and social sciences have decried the exclusion from assessing master's and PhD scholarships in any foreign university by tertiary fund trust fund, that's a TED fund. The lecturers said TED Fund came up with a new policy which stipulates that only lecturers in science and technology would be sponsored in foreign universities, while others go to any university in the country. They lamented that the policy was coming after they had secured admissions into various universities outside the country. And my question is, why the segregation? Why is there more emphasis or interest put on lecturers in science and technology? I don't think those in charge of the TED Fund have heard that the world has moved from STEM to STEAM, and that every aspect, every discipline is important for our all-round development. It's not just the sciences and technology that move us as a people or that move us as a nation. We need the arts, we need the social sciences, we need education, we need the management sciences, and even if it's the management arts, we need all of them. I'm really hoping that someone that can make considerable impact on this situation is that their attention is drawn to this, and they can review this stance, or review this new what's it now, whatever the resolution is. I'm hoping they can really review that, because one danger of this is that lecturers in the arts and education, in social sciences, and all the other faculties that have been excluded from TED Fund, there is a high possibility of them either relaxing and feeling well, since we're not going to be allowed or we're not going to be given grants to study abroad. Why do we have to stay in the country? They may lose steam and just lose complete interest. And then we see that there's likely going to be a steady decline in these areas, or there's going to be an export and everybody runs away and feels, well, if they're not going to give me this opportunity in my country, I can as well look for it elsewhere. So that's my take on that, and that's our review of the headlines this morning.
Okay, thank you very much. And we head into the conversation of this morning. And it's important for us to realize that the conversation of today is going to be, it won't be one-sided. It will be a conversation that actually envelopes several aspects of our thoughts and our concern, and for us, it's very important for us to be able to articulate this as we move on. So I would say that let's how do I put it now? I'll say that let's get straight to the meat of the matter. The topic we have is the voice of veterans, and I know that while we might not be, let's even start by getting people to understand. The conversation today is not just talking about you meeting with veterans, but we getting a better perspective of what it is to be a veteran, what is considered as veteran, as not just the definition in English, but the representation of what they are to do, and also get a step further to be able to say that, okay, what's the importance? What role do veterans play? What's the expected add-on? What are the value added? And in this dispensation, have we had a lot of that? Have we had much of that? How do we get to bring the voice of veterans out? In what capacity? In what dimension? Do they need some measure of permission? Do they need some measure of activation? All these and many more are the things that we'd like to have a conversation with today, so that everyone out there can get to have a better perspective of it. So I'm going to ask you. So let me start with you, Faye. You said the voice of veterans. What also comes to your mind?
When we talk about a veteran, we're talking about somebody who has over the years accumulated significant experience, and their experience has moved from just from textbook or from print to expertise. So we're talking about people who have gone from being trained, who have gone from reading the literature and knowing, oh, this is what the ideal textbook says, to coming in direct contact with the different variations of what training says that is not that we're not that probably the textbook did not make arrangement for, did not make provision for. So these are people who they have increased their knowledge due to exercising it, and then getting to that point where we can call them experts in the field or in their occupation or profession.
Thank you very much. Because the average mind, an average mindset might be favorably disposed to old age, as typifying when you hear the word veterans. A lot of people will think, oh, this has to do with people who are retired, who probably are not in active service. These are people who were pioneers and founders. So we tend to sometimes excuse some people out of the bracket and include only a particular segment in the bracket. I think that one of the things that must be clearly defined when we talk about veteran is that there are three components that make us to classify people into veteranhood or veteranship. And number one is the quality of experience. Quality of experience for me is number one. Why am I saying that? Because the length of time in a place does not totally equate to quality of experience. I don't know whether I get my point. We've
Yeah.
had situations where people do not apply themselves in their industry, people do not apply themselves in their jobs, people do not apply themselves in their sector. Sometimes people have so out delegate situations that they are oblivious of things that happen, even though they spend time in the space. So if it's just a function of time, you cannot totally say that, oh, yes, someone is veteran. You can be in a place for 10 years and another person is in that same industry or space or job for 3 years, and that person can present to you depth of experience in quality than another. So if you want to consider veteranship or veteranhood or how we replace it, I think number one thing that characterizes a veteran is the quality of experience. Of course, length, but quality of experience. Number two is the depth of exposure. So there's quality experience, there's depth of exposure. A lot of us need to understand that once we begin to discover and realize that sometimes some people have demonstrated certain kind of depth in their exposure. They're exposed to certain things. And we're not talking about exposure on just, oh, this is how things are done, but they've really gotten depth of the workings and the dynamics of the space as educators and across the levels. Then we are now talking about that. So quality and length of experience, depth of exposure. But then there's another thing that I believe characterizes, right, um, veteranhood or veteranship, and it's actually this third one that does it for me, and it is when we look at it from functional expertise or futuristic expertise. What I mean is this: we find out that because of experience, because of exposure, some people have been able to merge. Some people have been able to create like an intersection, and that has produced to them relevant expertise that is functional to them, functional to the present day demand of their job or their work, functional, and of course is futuristic because expertise that is anchored on the past. Let me give you an example. If Falodun is a perfect expert in typewriter, that's you're a typist and you use the typewriter, you are the fastest typewriter operator. That's an expertise, but it's not future based. It's anchored on the past. And in a way, it's not functional today. We don't use typewriters anymore. Nobody would see that as a skill in high demand. Are you following what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
So what makes us veteran is not that we can point our fingers to a predated past, as in a prehistoric past. Our ability to come up to say some people, some set of professionals are veterans, these three elements must be visibly expressed or visibly evident in them. It must not be docile, neither should it be staying as potential. It must be something that they are able to bring to bear. You understand? So that's what I think is ability to see the way to drive is different from ability to know how to drive, you know. So that is what makes veteran. And because of that, I'm going to ask you a question. I'll allow you to continue. That means that you have people who are young, but they come into the classification of veterans. I don't know whether you get my point.
Yeah.
In this context, it means that we can have young people who are veterans. So people who are young should never take themselves out of, and I think that's the thing, again, the kind of education innovation we are looking at in Africa and Nigeria in particular. Because I think that a lot of people think that until they are exiting the system, they don't need to talk about contributing to developing the system. And that's a very dangerous trend. It's a very dangerous trend. The moment you have had depth of expertise, you've had a lot of things that has to do with your exposure and your experience. Come on, you should be able to understand that it is necessary and there's a demand on you to share what you know, to state what you've discovered, to develop where you've always had issues or to develop where you've always worked at. These are the proofs of veteranship or capacity to be a veteran. We need the voice of veterans in education. We need the voice of veterans in our schools. We need them to voice out. Young dynamic educator out there, you need to understand your dynamism is not for show. It's not for showcase only. It's not just for social media. You know, some people think, oh, because they've gathered some measure of knowledge and expertise, they now showcase it as a proof of branding. No, it must go beyond that. That's the weakest link. That's the weakest level of engagement. Try as much as possible to know that the baton has been passed to you, that you've qualified by entering the 3E zone. And that 3E zone has given you a responsibility placed on your shoulder to move and advance your sector and colleagues, move and advance your industry with the knowledge you have, which is categorized as expertise, experience, and of course, exposure. Over to you, Fink.
Thank you very much. And that's very explanatory and very in depth, because usually when we think about veterans, yeah, we think about, oh, someone who has retired. But what comes to mind right now is the case of where we have veterans in the U.S. Army. Some of them are young men, maybe even in their 40s, who have gone to war, who have fought, and who are now retiring to say, look, I'm going out of the military to do other things. But then we find that when you need maybe people, what's it called, private investigators or security experts, you come to these people to get um, to get their opinion, or to even engage them in providing consultation in this area. So it's very important for us as voices in the education sector to realize that, look, the fact that somebody started out as a teacher 10 years ago does not make them any less experienced than someone who has been teaching for 35 years. And then you think, oh, what do you know? What's exactly, when I was in the teacher training college, you were not born yet. And then because of that, we water down the experience that we could have tapped into. We water down the voices, and realizing that one thing that when I think about this veteran issue, one thing that comes to mind is where you have teenagers, maybe teenagers class in a church, and then you have people who are over like 45 up, being their teachers, being their instructors, and then trying to now fix them into the mold of how things were in the middle to late 70s, early 80s. And the children are revolting against it. And then we say, oh, they've been taken over, they've been possessed by demons or by this or by that. The truth is, there is that divide. You're not able to cross into their world, because the way it existed when you were growing up and what applied to you as a teenager then does not apply to teenagers now. So when we look at the voice of veterans, we probably want to even put a timeline to those who are actively maybe into policy making, those who are there for, we're coming back to you to gain experience of what worked in the past that we can still bring in today. Where can we have a blend and all, but not saying that, oh, because this person was a headmaster 50 years ago, so we're entrusting the policies of modern education into their hands. What do they know about whiteboards? What do they know about interactive boards? What do they know about all the new forms of, what do they even know about? We're talking a lot about hybrid education now. Many of them cannot even fathom it. Some even feel like it's a waste of time until a teacher is in front of students with a stick in hand. They are not learning. So I think we even need to define a timeline in who are the policymakers, who are the regulators, who are those that we can go back to and say, oh, like ex officio, who are those that we can, we need some advice, or we need to rebrand or reprocess some things. Probably need to have that timeline and know and fix the right people in the right places. Thank you and welcome. If you're welcome to the show this morning.
Sorry, my mic was muted. Thank you very much, Fee. Thanks. And good morning, Mr. Yitayo. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning.
I'm not talking to you if you're I'm not talking to you.
Why?
You're asking me.
Good morning.
All right. Good morning. How are you?
Can I say good morning?
Okay, so I think another follow-up information. Hey, hello, how are you?
Say good
Let's see
morning.
your face. Good morning.
Good morning.
Hi, good morning.
That's the face of an international educator.
Yeah. You want to say how are you?
How are you?
I'm very well, thank
Very
you.
well, thank you.
Thank you so much for showing your face. All
You're
right,
welcome.
so
You're welcome.
I believe that there's something that we must be mindful of, and this is where there might be a major difference. And you know, when you say veterans, and of course we've already clarified to a large extent what people should consider as veterans, and we need to understand that it's one thing to say, or it's one thing to qualify as veterans. The next aspect is the voice of veterans. The voice element, we need to echo that very well. Why am I saying this? See, ability to point out that so person is a very good person. So person has so capacity. If the person is not voicing out, if we don't feel the impact of the person, if we don't see the quality of the person's contribution, that veteran without a voice is almost no veteran at all. Because your voice is your symbol of impact. Your voice is your demonstration of the thing that we've given you as the credence that says that you're a veteran. Now think about it this way. It is said that the opportunity of a lifetime exists in the lifetime of that opportunity. What it simply means is this: every veteran's effect, the effect of being a veteran, the potency of your being a veteran exists in the lifetime of the relevance of that input of the veteran. Meaning that if you don't have a voice now and your voice is not heard, there will come a time the voice is considered an echo. Think about it. If I knew how to do typewriting, and I've been there from long ago, I'm ancient of this, classified in age. By the time I don't do anything in the sector, imagine I'm not bringing my voice out now as a veteran in education. I am telling you how typewriter works. Excuse me, that's no longer a voice. You understand? Maybe it's good for tourism, maybe it's good for museum, but that's no longer a voice. So we need to look at the two things that matter in the conversation of the day. And I really want, if you can, to really, bring this on board. You need to recognize even the veteran that knows himself or herself, or the organizations that are serving as veterans in capacity of what they do, must recognize that your voice, or the voice of veterans, is equally as vintage and important as the veterans themselves, if not more. Because what you have to offer, right, is really the crux of the matter than who you are. You understand? If you exalt the personality of the veteran over the performance and the giftings of what we want from the veteran, then we'll be missing out on the point. Over to you guys.
Okay, can I come in here? All right. I wanted to just touch down on something Fee said when I just joined. I just heard that, and then she ended her speech. So she talked about veterans, people who have been in education, the education field, and have probably retired, and challenging current or recent developments. And I wanted to say that that on its own is not a trait of, or should not be, or is not a trait of a veteran, because in whatever field we're looking at, and even in the field of education here, one of the very strong characteristics of a veteran is being able to face the enemy. Okay, I'm saying it literally here, but I'm going to connect it. So when I hear veteran, I'm thinking military, I'm thinking all of that. However, talking about facing the enemy in this case as educationists is, what's the enemy here? It's ignorance. Okay, it's sitting back and allowing trends, allowing development to pass, to pass you. So as a veteran in education, you're constantly on your feet, whether you have retired or you have not, because there is a mandate on you. People come to you for advice. Oh, she knows so much. She's been in this field for years and years. And so there's a lot of responsibility that is placed on you. So you should be able to go face on with that enemy, which is ignorance, which is adverse, which is discomfort. So anything that comes as discomfort to you, you should, as a veteran, be able to ward it off. And what does it mean to ward it off? If it means you going your way out to obtain or to get the information you need to get so that you can maintain, in quotes, maintain that place or that position as a veteran, so people can keep looking up to you. You do not need to constantly, okay, sorry, let me put this right. There's that need to constantly refer to your past, to your experience, but there's also that value that people get when they see you can project into the future. That is one of and that's what I'm looking to achieve as I age. In my 80s, in my 90s, I can still be, on top of things as a veteran, in quotes. So what does that mean? It means that people can still come to me and say, yes, she's old, but she still has value to give that you can use in your practice now for the future. So I was just gonna say that, Fee, sorry, coming from where you you stopped. Okay, so I'll leave it there for now. Hi, Safety Chief. Good morning. I see you've joined us.
Good morning, Iftil. Good morning, Mr. Ritimi. Good morning, Finn. Nice to see your
Good morning,
faces.
Safety Check.
Okay, so
Fini, over to you.
Okay. I think we should be hearing also from Safety Chick this morning what her view of the voice of veterans is. When we talk about veterans in our particular field now in education, it's interesting that most of the time when we use veterans, it's for the armed forces. That's where we really use veterans. But for our field, for the field of education, what voice should our veterans have?
Okay, so the voice of veterans should be steady, it should be stable, it should be informed, it should be yes, steady, stable, and informed. Steady because you are the ones who have gone ahead in that field, and there are so many other young people who are looking to you, right? So it should stand for something. Stable because you should not be he should not be blown any in any direction by the wind. There are things that should be sacrosanct in the industry, right? So you shouldn't be anywhere belle face. And then of course informed because again you are like how do I put this now? You're a body of knowledge, right? So people want to know how have things been in the past, and then and how so that they are able to make informed decisions for the present and for the future. So a lot of new people in new entrants into the industry would want to glean from your wisdom, because the truth is your journey has been long, your journey has been informed, and what people learn from you, what the younger ones learn from you, can shorten their own learning curve. Because again, that's what mentorship does, right? Mentorship bridges the gap. And so those who have gone ahead are able to help the younger ones bridge that gap because they are informed. So the voice of veterans should be steady, it should be stable, and it should be very informed. It's not really good when the people who are supposed to know better are ill-informed and they are all over the place. It doesn't encourage the new people who are coming into the industry, and it doesn't make people see that they also have a future, there is a path. It should be that people should look at the veterans in the space and want to be like them and even do better than they have done. There should be those sort of models that all the young entrants can look up to. Yeah, that's it for me.
All right, thank you, Safety Chick. Now, when we talk about this voice of veterans, one thing that I had been thinking about as I've been speaking is how do we even activate the voice of the veterans? Are we going to say, oh, people, you know that you have wide expertise in this area, you have stayed as maybe an early years educator for 10 years, and you have seen all sorts of forms of things that go on in that area. Is it the system calling out to veterans to activate their voices, or they taking the lead to say, look, I know I have something to offer? It's going to take somebody with a lot of very good self-esteem, someone who is very confident and sure of themselves, to say, look, I'm an authority in this area, to introduce themselves as an authority without being called upon. So how do we activate the voice of the veteran? And I will take that to Mr. Itayo.
Well, activating the voice of veterans, number one, is we need to be able to articulate the concerns within the sphere, and sometimes we need to point fingers. We need to be able to bring some things and take it to the table. The buck stops at such people's table. So for people who know that there are people who have demonstrated the three E's that I shared, those elements that showcases who you are as a veteran, even if you've not accepted. The first thing to tell you, if you're, look, what are you doing about early years? It's not until IFYOC is ready, or it's not until it becomes IFYOC's agenda. We need to understand it's not even until it becomes IFYOC's radar within the vision, oh, what I plan to do at the end of the year. I can call up IFYOC and say, look, right before your very face, the early years foundation is collapsing and we are ruining the future of the children. Do something about it. We need to be able to have honest conversations to activate the voice. Because some people know that they are good, but they don't know they have a voice. And some cases, we need to bring them together and groom them so that that voice can come out. A lot of people need to know how to articulate their expertise. So their expertise is just like raw energy without form, without void. So we need some measure of grooming. In the place of grooming, people begin to find their voice, because sometimes sound and voice are not the same thing. So when you have those expertise, you have those experiences, you have all those exposure, we might need to now tell them the conduit, the route to follow. If you're going to do this in advocacy manner, this is how you're going to do it. If you're going to do this in activism manner, this is how you're going to do it. If you're going to do this in empowerment manner, this is how you're going to do it. If you're going to do this in advisory manner, this is how you're going to do it. If you're going to do this in supportive manner, this is how you're going to do it. If you're going to do this through business, this is how you're going to do it. So when people are able to see, then you begin to hear them. And when you hear them, there's still a back-end support. And though they are veterans, they begin to grow in this newfound voice. And once they're able to find their voice, you know what happens? They begin to fan their voice. So we find that voice for them. Then they fan the voice, and then you now begin to see focus. They grow in it because they're already great at what they do. They already have expertise on their inside. I think that's what we need to see as the next phase. Rather than brandishing and celebrating what we've acquired in place of knowledge acquisition, it's now time for us to condition our experts to move beyond celebration of what they are able to say is their identity to really, really doing something and navigating, using that same identity that they found for the greater good of society. I think that's the way to activate the voice.
Thank you. And I'll ask if you're the same question. How do we activate the voice of veterans?
Okay, well, I will. So one of the traits, okay, of a veteran is basically being a lifelong learner, a fast and lifelong learner. And so there's nothing anyone cannot learn at any age, with encouragement and with belief in the fact that things can actually work differently. Okay, I think that's one thing that, maybe for veterans, they probably have been in the system for too long or for so long that there is no belief that anything can be different. Imagine somebody has been in the field of education for 30 years or 40 years or 50 years and, we come up with this activate your voice mission. And at the end of the day, it's also about the message. So everybody has a different message. Everybody has what is at the bottom of their hearts that they would like to pass on. I think it's one, apart from finding your voice, but also defining that message that that particular veteran is going to be giving out to the world. I think that's one way. So guiding veterans or guiding us as education is to be able to define that message, and with guidance be able to find the voice to portray that message or sell that message out to the world for the betterment of the system. I think that's something that we can do, and it's possible, like I said, because we are as educationists or as veterans in this field are fast and lifelong learners. So that's something that's already working in our advantage.
All right, thank you. And Ugochi, I'm bringing this to you. Are we ready? Are we ready to listen to the voice of veterans, or are we all still struggling for recognition, for a place to say, look, yes, I'm here, I'm doing this? Are we all struggling for that place of being the most, maybe not the voice of the veteran, but being the strongest, most forceful voice? Are we ready really for the voice of the veterans?
Well, I think that would be a personal question because there are those who are ready, who know that it's really important to look back when you're planning to look ahead, and there are also those who do not want to, should I say, get counsel and get information. So I can't really say, I can't give a general statement to that. I think it's going to be dependent on the individual. I also think that as it is dependent on the individual also now checks out these veterans and decides which of them they can listen to. Now, if they keep experiencing veterans who are not living up to the positioning, it can make them to get should I say, it might make them to get discouraged, right? But again, that's why it depends on the individual to understand that the fact that there are some people who are not doing well does not mean everybody in that category is like that, that you must be willing to look out for that one person. And then of course, when the educators who have experienced amazing veterans, they know that yes, this is a valuable resource. So at the end of the day, it boils down to the individual in question. Is it an individual that is willing to learn from other people, to humble themselves and know that, life is in stages? Or is it someone who feels like they know it all and they're not willing to take information or learn from others?
All right, thank you. I picked one thing from what Ugochi said, that it's not even all voices of veterans that you can listen to. Some are not saying the right thing. Some are not maybe not as knowledgeable as they think they are, but because in their own sphere they believe, oh, I have seen it all, and seeing it all is very relative. Where one person believes, oh, I've had all the experience, I've had all the immersion, it can't be worse than this. They get into a wider pool and they realize, oh, that my small baby pool is like 1/10 of an Olympic sized pool, and there is still so much more immersion to be done. And the conversation this morning has been deep, has been challenging on some mindsets where we just believe things go this way, or and some people really are sitting somewhere expecting that you see all the things that you people say every day. There are issues in education. Oh, the system needs this and that. If you just come and meet us, we have the answer. And they're just sitting there and expecting, oh yes, we are the archive section of the library. You come and meet us. Bring your library card. Let's give you the resources you need. Now, there's a call to them that look, if you don't speak up, then we don't know you are there. So, don't just be the silent archivist. Bring something out and let's hear you. And as we round off this morning, I'll just ask for our final thoughts on the voice of veterans and what are those things that we would like to drop as our parting shots this morning. And I'll start with Afiok with the safety check and then round off with Mr. Itayo.
Thank you for starting with me. I was very happy. I don't want to lose this thought. So while you were talking, it came to my mind. We had this librarian, really, who would just sit there literally at the front of the door. She had been there for, I think, over 20 years. And honestly, she was a very useful person. But you could go into that library and do all you can. She's not going to move unless you come up to her, ask her, this is what I'm looking for. And she'll literally tell you the aisle. She'll tell you, in fact, someone mentioned once that she actually told him how many steps to take
Uh-uh.
to get to the book.
Hey,
Yes.
good.
Okay.
Efficiency. Wow.
So yes, so that's over efficient. So while you were talking, I remember that story. But then it also occurred to me that as far as she's concerned, a lot of people that came in there and left without experiencing her relevance there. So being a veteran is not synonymous to relevance unless I think it's in the application of that experience
Yeah.
that determines your relevance as a veteran. So I don't know, that's inspiration from the Holy Spirit and from Fee that just gave that story. So
Those
being a
archives.
veteran, yes, you have to employ your experience to be relevant. I'll leave it there, I'll put it there.
I really like this your contribution and Finn's analogy of archive. Interesting. So what was just coming to mind for me is many veterans today are doing the things they did not like in previous veterans. And so for me to be a call to the those who are coming behind, as you see things in veterans that you do not like, that you do not feel that they are good practices of helping the younger generation or those coming after you. Ensure that you do not also become that person when you also become a veteran. Be intentional about modeling the right things, bringing the right perspectives into it. Because, we keep having this thing where some people would feel because they suffered in their time. so they want other people to also come and suffer. It doesn't have to be that way. In fact, it is because you suffer that you should make it easy for those coming after you. So as much as we know that there are some veterans who are not doing the right thing, don't just castigate. Instead, look for how and look for the ways to should I say boost your own capacity so that you can be a better veteran. And then shout out to all the amazing veterans in the education space. Please keep doing it so that I can encourage those that are coming behind. Back to you, Queen.
Yes, and over to Mr. Itaya.
All right. So just as we said, I think it's important for us to not just hone or focus on our expertise. I think we need to now start talking about our voice. There's no voice and no amount of sound of the voice that is too small. And so everyone out there that possesses those elements must understand that it is your responsibility. The future demands it, nature expects it, the sector needs it, and life is dependent on it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for being here this morning and for sharing your voice of veteranhood, veteranism. Thank you for sharing it.
Veteranism.
Thank you for sharing your veteran voices with us this morning. And every time we have these conversations, it's targeted at getting something better out of the system. It's targeted at causing a change. And this morning, we hope that the change that we have activated in this discussion finds fuller expression and that we begin to see it practically being manifested. Thank you very much, Ifiok. Thank you, Ugochi. Thank you, Mr. Eyitaya. And Ayobola,
Yeah.
I know, thank you for joining us this morning. And to all our silent tribe members, I wish there was a way we can just unveil all of you one day, but we'll get to we're going to some of you and we'll unveil you. And as we round off this morning, we'll sign off in our usual manner as I wish our tribe members a beautiful day ahead. So let's go. Let's go. 1, 2, let's go. It's
Always
all
A great morning on the
on the
Good
Good
Morning
Morning
Education Show.
good.
That's awesome.